Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to 10 Minutes with Kuhle, the only show where we still have the guts to tell you the honest truth about what's going on in South Africa, as well as to tell you as it is, because you can't trust these other so-called legacy media houses. I won't mention the names, but the ones that don't share the real truth about what's really going on in South Africa. Ladies and gentlemen, yet again, I would like to remind you, please do like, share, and subscribe. I know it's still the beginning of the video, but I think it's very important that I highlight that only 10% of my viewers are subscribed to 10 Minutes with Kuhle. It would really mean a lot for you to subscribe. It really helps in making these videos. Nonetheless, ladies and gentlemen, South Africa, a land with a lot of drama, filled with stories, filled with, ever continuing drama. There's always fire in this house. From Senzo Mchunu being kicked out and put on paid leave. Never heard of such, but you'll hear it with the ANC. To Gwede Mantashe becoming the acting minister of police goes to show the power the man has in the ANC. Now, without wasting too much time, I think it's very important for us to remember that ever since Gwede Mantashe has become, this acting minister, he has possibly achieved more in these last 3 to 4 days than he has achieved in his 20 plus years of, being a public servant or being a public servant politician, because we know his dismal track record at, Department of Minerals, but surprisingly, he seemed to be efficient in this position. Nonetheless, that efficiency rather led to, Kenny Gunene being caught in a crossfire yesterday, where he was found at the murder accused house of the guy who supposedly murdered DJ Somebody. He came out with a laughable explanation as to, why was he at that house, It's laughable. I mean, supposedly they went there for an interview, because he's got a media company that none of us know of. We've only gotten to hear through this revelation. And, he said he went there with a couple of journalists. Yet again, we ask, aren't they taxis, aren't they Ubers to drop off these journalists at that house? But nonetheless, he transported them there. Cool. And gets there. One thing, here come the police. They find him there. Now, let me just play a small clip for you so that you can see the ridiculousness of this laughable excuse of his. Please watch it.
From Konazi, if investigators had to dig and look for any connection between you and him, they're going to find nothing. Can you say that for sure?
Yes, they're going to find nothing. I told them. If I knew Mr. Molefe, you see, one thing about me, I don't lie about things because things come out. If at all I knew Mr. Molefe and I had his number and he sent me the address I was going to meet him, I was going to say yes. I was going there to meet him, and these are the reasons why I was going to meet him. There's a lot of people, there's relatives of mine that have committed crimes. I've gone to see them. There are people that have supported me in my business when I had clubs and restaurants, and they would be in trouble, and I would go to the police station and see them.
Okay, all right. Let's just very quickly touch on the actual night that DJ. Is it somebody? Is it somebody yes. or somebody? Okay, we'll agree to disagree on the name. Everyone is. When he was killed, where you tell us about that night very quickly, what you remember.
I can't really remember where I was, but I saw on social media, and some people also called me. By the way, before DJ Somebody rose to prominence, I used to work with him in Tshwane. Sunnyside, before he even opened a place, I used to work with him. I actually groomed him in the entertainment industry. We did things together. I advised him.
Now, obviously, this media company of his, after watching that, as you can tell, seems to, have been, well, from our records and from what we've checked here, 10 minutes with Kuhle. And yes, we backed it up because you'd have heard it from Cyril Ramaphosa, actually, if you watch SNWX. And we've also done our little research here, 10 minutes with Kuhle, to back it up and say that it's true that, well, this media company of Kenny Gunena's actually got deregistered in February this year. Wonder what business are you conducting with a deregistered company, Mr. Kuneni? Nonetheless, that aside, that is not the main story behind today's video. It's got nothing. It's just one of the stories that I felt that we had to include, because you could not really go past today's news without speaking about the fact that, Kenny Kunene has been part of this crime, And it goes to show our suspicions that the PA or the Patriotic Alliance has always just been this gangster organization. It really goes to show that it's just another gangster organization filled with thugs that are using formal channels to siphon their money. It really is. I'm not shocked. Filled with thugs. Nonetheless, let's speak about our President Palapala or Pupol or Ramaphosa or whoever you want to call him, but the big nose guys. Let's speak about Ramaphosa. So, it's not looking good for Ramaphosa. Cool, the DA has agreed to basically give Ramaphosa a lifeline today by voting for these appropriation bills and voting for all these 40 plus departmental bills that will be going through. It's actually going on as we're speaking. They've given Ramaphosa a lifeline. Cool and sweet. But outside of the lifeline that the DA gave Ramaphosa, because they gave Ramaphosa this lifeline due to the fact that he fired in Kabani, Kuhle's no longer there by default, so it feels as if, we're finally dealing with some corruption. But outside of that, as I was saying, outside of the lifeline, Mkhonto Wesizwe has just proposed a motion of no confidence against Ramaphosa. Proposed a motion of no confidence against Ramaphosa. Well, the thing about the motion of no confidence, right? It still has to go to this. Well, it's actually on the speaker's desk right now. After being on the speaker's desk, it needs to go to, the standing committee, or rather, I mean, the Secretary of Parliament, and then they have got to have a discussion about when we are going to table this motion of no confidence. That discussion still needs to be had with the Secretary of Parliament. When that discussion has been finalized, a date will come out for this motion of no confidence. But essentially, this motion of no confidence, it stems from the Pala issue. It comes from Marikana. It comes from long ago issues, right? But long ago issues that still, to be quite honest, still linger with us even today. So I can't really blame the Mkhonto Wesizwe party for considering going that way. Nonetheless, the numbers aren't looking great for the racist president called Cyril Ramaphosa. If there's one thing that I am surely aware of, is Cyril Ramaphosa has been the most racist president we have had in South Africa's democratic era, if this is even real democracy. He is the most racist president that we've had in South Africa's democratic era. And we can't lie about that. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's going to be quite interesting to see how Parliament votes if this does become a secret ballot. Many, many questions are to be left unanswered till the day. I would just like you to watch this video of, the Mkhonto Wesizwe proposing for a motion of no confidence against Pupol Ramaphosa. Have a watch.
People, our traditional leaders are still sitting at home They don't have any constitutional rights. They can't even control. There's no social order in their communities. What is working in this country that makes you to have confidence in this president coming from the 6th right through to the 7th administration? It's obvious that there's nothing that's working. He's just basically hanging by the thread with the DA, always putting a gun at his head. Do this, otherwise we won't vote for the budget. Do this, give us another minister, otherwise we're going to pull the plug. We've been suffering as a country. That's why we're sitting at budget 3.0, because we've got a president who basically is just hanging on a vote of the DA, and they are using it as and when it pleases them. So we have provided those reasons in the motion of no confidence, and we'll share it publicly shortly, and you'll be able to see that. Who's going to support this motion of no confidence? We have faith in the Progressive Caucus. Most of them have expressed that they are definitely behind this motion of no confidence. And we also hope that sanity will prevail over the DA, that finally they will choose.
Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. As you can see, there's, the MK speaking about their reasons behind this motion of no confidence that they'll be tabling. Well, I won't lie, I'm perhaps the most excited to see Ramaphosa possibly go. I keep on asking God every day, what did we do wrong as a country to deserve Ramaphosa? Honestly speaking, he has been the worst president we've ever had. Zuma was a crook, he was a thief that just liked to steal. But there's one thing that Zuma understood, was that, like any other thief will understand, is that in order to, like any other crook understood, that in order to steal from you, I've got to create a thriving economy where you actually have something where I can actually steal from you. That's one thing that Zuma understood, was in order for me to steal from you is people need to have money so that I can actually steal something. And well, Ramaphosa even lacks that. These are just thugs that are just feeding away from the trough. I've got zero understanding of how an economy works. At least, Zuma, as malevolent as he was, at least there was some form of understanding that the economy still needed to run, but not with our dear old Pupol Ramaphosa, in his infinite wisdom. Unfortunately, he doesn't understand. So, I can't wait for this motion of no confidence to be tabled. My only hope is the DA actually votes for this motion. Let us get Ramaphosa out of here. Let us get the ANC out of here. I don't think we realize that this doomsday coalition is actually the ANC itself. It isn't EFF or Mkhonto weSizwe. Like, they couldn't be any worse than the ANC at this point. They really couldn't be. I mean, what has this last 2 weeks shown us about the ANC? They are part and parcel of crime, which we all knew. They are incompetent, which we all knew. They never take accountability, i.e. Senzo Mchunu. Nkabani is only now, but they never take accountability, which we all knew. They're not competent. You've seen, if you go to the Western Cape, Plettenberg Bay Airport closed down when the ANC administration got in recently because they were not able to maintain the airport. Simple things. They're just not competent. The list goes on and on and on and on. I would rather have a relationship where the DA goes into coalition with an EFF or an MK. And hear me out very well. Just hear me out. The EFF is a 9% party. Majority of their rubbish that they want to propose will never come through. Right. MK is 15%. MK, we don't know if they're communist or traditionalist or royalist. We don't know what's going on there. But, since Floyd is no longer there, they're not so much of communists. They're more on this traditionalist spectrum, right? That's where they are. And then there's us, the capitalists and the free marketeers, who will back the DA through and through. There's VF Plus as well. There's other parties, right? Now, I'm saying leave the ANC. The unfortunate part and the reality that we've got to wake up to is the ANC has got 40%. So any coalition with the ANC is always going to be what we call an ANC-led coalition, which means majority of what they say will chances go through or pass through. But if we leave that coalition and let's say we opt for a DA coalition where we've got MK and the EFF, the DA becomes the biggest party by plurality, meaning that they get to lead the coalition, right? In a way, or get to have a form of direction in terms of where the wind goes. So please, listen to what I'm saying. I know we're all afraid of the MK and the EFF. I don't like them either. I've got my own issues with those parties. I've got many problems, not even own issues. Ton of problems. But I do think they are the better of the devil. So, ladies and gentlemen, one of our last stories today will be on Senator or House Representative rather, or Congressman, pardon me, Ronnie Jackson from the US, the guy who has become popular for writing the essay United States bilateral bill. He's pushing for that to pass through, and chances are that will pass through. So, it's gonna start obviously in the House of Congress. That's where they'll vote for it. After it has been passed in the House of Congress, it will go to Senate. Now, an interesting thing is that the Republicans have got a majority in both houses. Unlike the ANC, the ANC only have a majority in the NCOP in South Africa, which is the upper house of parliament, and not the National Assembly, which is the popular house of parliament, right? Nonetheless, we're not discussing that. The bottom line is the House of Congress, the congressmen are on recess. Recess is scheduled to end the beginning of September, and then this bill should be tabled. And it looks like by all means possible, this bill will be passed. Now, let me tell you what this bill entails and why it affects South Africa so much. This is the same bill that we've been hammering on for days here at 10 Minutes with Kuhle, which basically speaks about, the US sanctioning certain leaders of government or certain officials in government, for their views on Israel, Palestine, for being communist, for all that junk the ANC has become popular for in the last couple of days. Finally, something's being done about it. For standing with China, for standing with Russia. I think the ANC are the only people that somehow believe that the East is the future. Let me tell you, America's strong and it's still going very hard. So, Senator Ronnie Jackson, or Congressman rather, keep mixing the two. Congressman Ronnie Jackson, Congressman from Texas, has listed his issues over why they're going to be pushing for this. So, he says, the communists, I'm quoting what he says, the communists and the terrorist remarks, that Pretoria has come out with lately. It's one of the reasons. He also took to X on Tuesday night to speak about this. So, trust me when I tell you that these sanctions are coming in hard on South Africa. And if you know anything about Wall Street, or you read the Wall Street Journal, which is pretty much code for American investment, there's a particular intelligent guy from there who wrote a piece that said, South Africa should no longer be, acknowledged as a developing country, and in fact, American companies should pull out investment. And he went as far to even say, that any country that is Western aligned and that trades with South African companies or does business in South Africa could this time next year face sanctions. So Ramaphosa's presidency, in summary, in relation to the thumbnail and the title, is really been a crazy one. I think his second term has been, fiery. It has been fiery. Hence, we've got the fire behind just for him. You know, it's been chaotic for this guy. I don't think he can even see beyond his nose. I don't think he can. I really don't think he can. I think his nose at this point does all the breathing for him because his tongue or his mouth seem quite shut about some of these issues. So, Ramaphosa is not enjoying it. This time next year, the man will possibly be gone because, well, no one wants him in the ANC. I don't even think, anyone wants to entertain him in the GNU outside of Gayton McKenzie, who is like a ball in his testicle sack, literally just part and parcel of him. There's no one else that sings his praises, unlike Gayton McKenzie, which speaks to our first story about the thuggery going on in South Africa. So, Ramaphosa's having it tough, guys. Seems like this man won't last. Seems like, well, this has been the last straw for him, If you watched Oliver Twist when you were younger, you remember when Oliver Twist played that game of pulling straws, and that's what led him to go and ask for more food. Well, this time, our Oliver, being Ramaphosa, does not have a successful ending like Oliver Twist, or a fairy tale ending where some rich guy comes and looks after you. No, trust me, it won't be China. The only ending it has is in the orphanage. Like John F. Kennedy said, winning has 1,000 fathers, but losing is an orphan. So, South Africa, we're on our own. We've got a very big problem in this country. A huge one. Don't know what you make of it, but it's a big problem. As I was traveling the other day, I was in an Uber. I was not actually in Gauteng. I was out of the province and was in an Uber. And this Uber guy says to me, a very interesting conversation we had. He says, black people are letting down South Africa. I laughed firstly because I wanted to hear where he's going. Says black people are letting down South Africa. I said, elaborate. He says to me, I just dropped off a parcel now at another construction site. And this black employee, told the white guy that you must come and pick up. Mind you, the white guy is the owner of the business, right? He told the white guy that, look, I'm not going to pick up this parcel. You will pick it up, And he says to me, he just couldn't believe it. And he says South Africa has got a black people problem. I don't want to add too much onto what he said, but I will just summarize more or less what he said after that. He says, South African black people are very, and mind, this is a black person that's telling me this, not me, does not even know me. Well, I found out that he actually does know me. I'm lying because he knows me from State of the Nation podcast with Mike Sham. But, he says we've got a black, person problem in South Africa where black people are lazy. They don't have the fire in them to fight for this country. They are also cowards in terms of they keep voting for the ANC and voting for these grants and the rest. And he says something that, well, I can't say, unfortunately. And I'm going to say it under quoting him. He says to me, South Africa would be dead if we didn't have white people. Let that sit in your mind, quote unquote. That's what he says to me. Let that linger in your mind. Let you process that and tell me what you think. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been 10 Minutes with Kuhle, where we don't sugarcoat. Remember, you can sign up for membership. It's as cheap as 20 Rand. I've been your host, Kuhle Maseko. You can also buy me a coffee by sending a super chat in the comments below. As well as you can reach out to me via email if you want to have a chat at Kuhle, Kuhle, Charles, 922 @gmail.com. I'll be more than happy to speak to you and hear what you think. Until then, keep that fire burning in your heart that South Africa will one day change. Till next time, bye.